The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of the Grand Celestial Hotel as Damien Cross adjusted his platinum cufflinks. At 34, he commanded a tech empire worth billions, but tonight he felt oddly restless. The charity auction buzzed with the city's elite, their laughter echoing through the opulent ballroom, yet he remained detached from it all. "Sir, the Hartwell painting is up next," James whispered beside him, consulting his tablet with practiced efficiency. As Damien's personal assistant for 7 years, James knew his boss's every preference and schedule. Damien nodded absently, his steel-gray eyes scanning the crowd. He had come here for business networking, not charity. Every handshake was calculated, every conversation a potential merger or acquisition. Love and sentiment were luxuries he couldn't afford, not after what Victoria had done to him 3 years ago. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the room, introducing the next piece. Ladies and gentlemen, we present Morning Light by emerging artist Sophia Rivers. Donated by the artist herself to benefit children's cancer research. Something in that name made Damien look up. On the stage stood a young woman unlike anyone in the room. While others wore designer gowns worth thousands, she wore a simple black dress that looked borrowed. Her chestnut hair fell in natural waves past her shoulders, and when she smiled nervously at the crowd, Damien felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. "The bidding starts at $5,000, the auctioneer announced. Silence filled the room. Damien watched as the young woman's face fell slightly, her hands clasping together in front of her. The painting behind her was beautiful, a sunrise. Over a city skyline painted with such emotion that it seemed to glow under the auction lights. "Do I hear 5,000? The auctioneer repeated, his voice carrying a hint of impatience. More silence. Whispers began circulating through the crowd. Damien saw the hurt flash across the artist's face as she realized her work wasn't wanted. Without thinking, his hand shot up. 50,000. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. The auctioneer's face lit up with delight. 50,000 too. Bidder number 47. Do I hear 60? Victoria Cross, his ex-fiancée, raised her paddle from across the room. 60,000. Her red lips curved into a predatory smile as their eyes met. Damien's jaw tightened. Victoria always had to make everything a competition. 100,000. The room fell silent again, but this time with anticipation rather than discomfort. Victoria's eyes flashed with anger and something else. Challenge. 150,000, she called out, her voice carrying across the room like silk over steel. On stage, Sophia Rivers looked between them with wide hazel eyes clearly, overwhelmed by the sudden attention her painting was receiving. Damien found himself studying her face, noting the genuine confusion and gratitude there. She wasn't playing games like Victoria. She wasn't calculating angles or advantages. She was simply a young woman whose art had unexpectedly become the center of a bidding war. 200,000, Damien said calmly, never taking his eyes off Sophia. Victoria hesitated for the first time that evening. 200,000 was serious money, even for her family's fortune. After a long moment, she lowered her paddle with visible reluctance. Sold to bidder number 47 for $200,000, the auctioneer declared enthusiastically. Applause filled the room, but Damien barely heard it. He was watching. As tears of gratitude filled Sophia's eyes, she mouthed thank you in his direction, and something inside his carefully guarded heart shifted. "Sir, that was quite generous," James murmured beside him. "Shall I arrange for the painting to be delivered to your penthouse?" "No," Damien said quietly, still watching as Sophia was led off stage by auction staff. "I want to meet the artist first." 20 minutes later, Damien found himself in a quiet corridor behind the main ballroom, waiting as James arranged the meeting. When Sophia appeared, she looked even more beautiful up close. Her makeup was minimal, her dress clearly not designer, but there was something luminous about her that made every expensive woman in the main room pale in comparison. "Mr. Cross," she said softly, extending a slightly trembling hand, "I can't thank you enough for what you did. That money will help so many children." Her hand was warm and soft in his, and Damien found himself reluctant to let go. "The painting was worth every penny. You're very talented, Miss Rivers." A blush colored her cheeks. "Please, call me Sophia. And honestly, I never expected anyone to bid that much. Most people here probably think my work is amateur compared to the masters being auctioned tonight. Most people here wouldn't recognize real art if it hit them in the face," Damien replied, surprised by his own honesty. "Your painting has something the others lack. Heart." Sophia's eyes widened slightly. "You really mean that?" Before Damien could answer, Victoria appeared beside them like a red-clad storm cloud. "Damien, darling, there you are. Been looking everywhere for you." Her eyes swept over Sophia dismissively. "And you must be the little artist. How charming." The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop several degrees. Damien felt Sophia tense beside him, and protective instincts he didn't know he possessed surged to life. "Victoria," he said coolly, "I thought you were in Paris." "I came back early to surprise you," she purred, moving closer to him with practiced seduction. "We need to talk about our arrangement." "We don't have an arrangement," Damien replied firmly, but Victoria continued as if he hadn't spoken. "About the air you need, I've reconsidered your proposal." Her smile was sharp as a blade as she glanced at Sophia. "Though I see you might have found other options." Sophia looked confused and hurt. "I should go," she said quietly, taking a step back. "No," Damien said quickly, catching her wrist gently. The contact sent electricity through both of them. Victoria was just leaving. For a moment, the three of them stood frozen in a tableau of tension. Then Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Damien, you always were attracted to charity cases. But remember, some things require breeding." She turned on her designer heels and swept away, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and implied threats. In the sudden quiet, Damien realized he was still holding Sophia's wrist. She was looking up at him with those honest hazel eyes, and he felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "I'm sorry about that," he said, releasing her reluctantly. "Victoria has a talent for making situations uncomfortable." "Okay," Sophia replied, though she still looked shaken. "I should probably get going anyway. I have classes tomorrow." "You're a student? Art major at the university? This is my final year?" She gestured vaguely toward the main ballroom. "I entered the auction because a friend dared me to, and because the cause is important to me. My little sister Alina has leukemia." The simple statement hit Damien like a physical blow. Here was this young woman struggling financially, using her art to help sick children while dealing with her own family crisis. The contrast between her selflessness and Victoria's calculated manipulation was stark. "I'm sorry to hear about your sister," he said quietly. "She's getting better," Sophia said with forced brightness. "The treatments are expensive, but she's strong." An idea began forming in Damien's mind. A dangerous, complicated idea that went against every business principle he'd ever followed. But looking at Sophia's brave smile and remembering the way she'd mouthed thank you on stage, he found himself not caring about principles. "Miss Rivers," he said carefully, "would you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" The question surprised them both. Sophia's eyes widened, and a soft smile curved her lips. "I'd like that very much, Mr. Cross." "Damien," he corrected, returning her smile with one of his own, as they exchanged numbers and made arrangements. Neither of them noticed Victoria watching from the shadows at the end of the corridor, her face twisted with rage and calculation. The game had just begun, and she had no intention of losing. The next evening, Sophia stood before her tiny apartment mirror, smoothing down the navy blue dress she had borrowed from her roommate Grace. Her hands trembled slightly as she applied lipstick. Still unable to believe that Damien Cross had asked her to dinner. Men like him didn't date women like her, yet here she was preparing for what felt like a fairy tale.
"Oh."
Her phone buzzed with a text from Alina at the hospital. "Good luck tonight, sis. Don't let him intimidate you. You're amazing." The message brought tears to Sophia's eyes. Even while fighting cancer, her 17-year-old sister was more concerned about Sophia's happiness than her own struggles. A sleek black car pulled up outside her modest building, and Sophia grabbed her purse. With shaking hands, the driver, impeccably dressed, opened the door for her with a professional smile. "Miss Rivers? Mr. Cross is waiting at the restaurant." 20 minutes later, Sophia found herself in the most exclusive restaurant in the city. She approached their private table and her breath caught. Gone was the formal businessman from the auction. Tonight he wore a charcoal gray suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, and when he smiled, genuine warmth reached his eyes. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out her chair with old-fashioned courtesy. "Thank you," Sophia replied, trying to calm her racing heart. "This place is incredible." As they settled into conversation, Sophia discovered that Damien was nothing like she had expected. He asked about her art with genuine interest, listened intently when she spoke about Elena's treatment, and shared stories about building his company from nothing. There was a loneliness in his eyes that spoke to something deep within her own heart. "Tell me about your family," Sophia said gently, noticing how his expression tightened slightly. "There's not much to tell," Damien replied, his voice carefully neutral. "My father, Robert, runs Cross Industries. We don't have what you'd call a warm relationship." Before Sophia could respond, a commotion near the restaurant entrance caught their attention. Victoria Cross swept in wearing a stunning red dress, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on their table. Behind her walked a distinguished older man with steel-gray hair and cold eyes that were unmistakably similar to Damien's. "Damien," the older man said as they approached the table. "I thought I might find you here." Damien's entire demeanor changed, his shoulders tensing as he stood. "Father, Victoria, what a surprise." Robert Cross's gaze fell on Sophia with calculating coldness. "And you must be the artist. Victoria told me about your little charity purchase last night." The dismissive tone made Sophia's cheeks burn, but she lifted her chin proudly. "Sophia Rivers, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Cross." "Indeed." Robert's smile was sharp as a blade. "Victoria, darling, why don't you join us? I'm sure Damien won't mind catching up with old friends." Before either Damien or Sophia could protest, Victoria had claimed the seat beside Damien, her hand landing possessively on his arm. "We have so much to discuss, don't we, darling?" The intimate dinner Sophia had been enjoying suddenly became a battlefield. Victoria dominated the conversation with talk of business deals, mutual friends, and shared memories, effectively shutting Sophia out. Robert watched the display with obvious approval, occasionally making pointed comments about the importance of suitable matches and family legacy. "Damien has been telling me about his need for an heir," Robert said, his eyes fixed on Sophia with predatory interest. "Perhaps we should discuss more practical arrangements." Father Damien's voice carried a warning, but Robert continued smoothly. "After all, some things are too important to leave to emotion. Bloodlines, family reputation, financial security, these require careful planning." Sophia felt her heart sink as she realized what they were discussing. She was being evaluated like a business transaction and clearly found wanting. Victoria's smile grew more triumphant with each passing moment. "Of course," Victoria added sweetly, "not everyone is cut out for such responsibilities. It takes a certain kind of strength, breeding, education." Damien said sharply, but the damage was done. Sophia could feel the walls closing in around her, the fantasy of the evening crumbling into harsh reality. "I should go," Sophia said quietly, reaching for her purse. "Thank you for dinner, Damien." "Sophia." "Wait." Damien started to rise, but his father's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "Let her go, son. We have business to discuss." As Sophia hurried toward the exit, she heard Victoria's laughter echoing behind her. The sound followed her all the way to the street, where she stood in the cool night air, trying not to cry. Phone rang, and Elena's cheerful voice filled the speaker. "Hey, how's the date going?" "It's over," Sophia said, unable to keep the tears from her voice. "What happened? Did he turn out to be a jerk?" "No," Sophia whispered. "He's wonderful. That's the problem." 3 days passed without word from Damien. Sophia threw herself into her art and Elena's care, trying to forget the way he had looked at her, the way his smile had made her feel like she was the only woman in the world. She was painting in the hospital garden when Grace found her. "You have a visitor," Grace said, slightly out of breath. "Very expensive-looking visitor." Sophia looked up to see Damien walking toward her, his usual confidence replaced by something more vulnerable. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, and his hair looked like he had been running his hands through it. "Sophia," he said, stopping a few feet away. "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," she replied, not looking up from her canvas. "I understand how these things work." "No, you don't." Damien moved closer, his voice urgent. "What happened at dinner? What my father and Victoria did? It was unforgivable. I should have stopped it. Why didn't you?" The question slipped out before Sophia could stop it. Damien was quiet for a long moment, because for 34 years, I've done what was expected of me. Built the company, made the right connections, followed the family plan. But when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something for myself. Sophia finally looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "What do you want, Damien?" He said simply. "I want you." Before Sophia could respond, her phone rang. Elena's name flashed on the screen, and she answered quickly. "Sophia?" Elena's voice was weak, frightened. "Can you come? The doctors want to talk to us about the next treatment phase. It's expensive, and insurance won't cover it all." Sophia's heart sank. They had already spent most of their savings on Elena's care. "I'll be right there, sweetheart." As she hung up, Damien stepped closer. "How much do you need?" "Can't ask you for money," Sophia said firmly, gathering her art supplies. "You're not asking? I'm offering." Damien caught her hand gently. "Let me help." "Why?" Sophia searched his eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because I care about you. Because your sister matters to you, which means she matters to me." Damien's voice was soft, but determined. "And because I have a proposition." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of proposition?"
"Marry me,"
Damien said quietly. "Not for love, not for romance. A business arrangement that benefits us both. I need an heir and a wife to satisfy my father's demands. Need financial security for Elena's treatment in your future." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. After everything they had shared, he was reducing their connection to a business transaction. "A business arrangement," she repeated numbly. "It doesn't have to be cold," Damien said quickly, seeing her expression. "We're attracted to each other. We could build something real over time." "While I provide you with an heir like a broodmare," Sophia said, anger finally replacing hurt. "It's not like that," Damien protested, but Sophia was already walking away. "Yes, it is," she called back. "It's exactly like that, and the answer is no." As Sophia disappeared into the hospital, Damien stood alone in the garden, realizing he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. In trying to protect both of them with logic and contracts, he had destroyed the one genuine connection he had ever felt. Behind a nearby tree, Victoria stepped out of the shadows, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. Her plan was working perfectly. Soon Damien would realize that some mistakes couldn't be undone, and he would come back to her where he belonged. The game was far from over, and Victoria always played to win. 2 weeks had passed since Sophia's rejection, and Damien Cross had never felt more empty. His penthouse office overlooked the city, but all he could see was Sophia's hurt expression when he had reduced their connection to a business proposition. James had placed the morning reports on his desk, but they remained untouched as Damien stared at the painting he had bought at the auction. "Sir," James said carefully, "Carmen Rodriguez from Apex Technologies is here for the meeting about the merger." Damien nodded absently. Carmen Rodriguez was a formidable businesswoman who had been circling his company like a shark. Looking for any weakness she could exploit? Today felt like the perfect day for her to strike. Carmen entered the office with predatory grace, her black suit immaculate, her smile sharp. "Damien, you look terrible. Business troubles?" "Nothing I can't handle," Damien replied, forcing himself to focus. "Let's discuss your proposal." As Carmen outlined her plans to acquire several of his smaller subsidiaries, Damien found his mind. Wandering to Sophia, was Elena getting the treatment she needed? Was Sophia eating properly while worrying about her sister? The questions tormented him. "Are you even listening?" Carmen's voice cut through his thoughts. Of course, Damien lied smoothly. Carmen leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Good, because I have another proposition, a personal one." Before Damien could respond, the office door burst open. Victoria rushed in, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, tears streaming down her face. "Damien, thank God you're here," she sobbed, throwing herself into his arms. Something terrible has happened. Carmen watched the scene with obvious interest as Damien tried to untangle himself from Victoria's grip. "What's wrong?" "It's that girl, Sophia," Victoria said between sobs. "There's been an accident." Damien's blood turned to ice. What kind of accident?" "She was hit by a car outside the hospital. She's in critical condition." Victoria's tears seemed genuine, but something in her eyes made Damien's instincts scream danger. Without another word, Damien grabbed his keys and raced from the office, leaving both women behind. The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic and terrifying thoughts. If something happened to Sophia before he could tell her how he really felt, he would never forgive himself. At the hospital, Damien found Grace pacing in the waiting room, her face streaked with tears. "Grace, how is she? How is Sophia?" Grace looked up in surprise. "Sophia, she's fine. She's upstairs with Alina. Why would you think otherwise?" Confusion washed over Damien. "Victoria said there was an accident, that Sophia was hit by a car." "That's impossible," Grace said firmly. "I just saw her 20 minutes ago. She's been here all day because Alina took a turn for the worse." Realization hit Damien like a physical blow. Victoria had lied, manipulated him once again. But why? What did she gain by bringing him here under false pretenses, Mr. Cross? A soft voice made him turn. Sophia stood at the top of the stairs, looking pale and exhausted but very much alive. "What are you doing here?" Relief flooded through him so powerfully that his knees almost buckled. Without thinking, he crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "Thank God you're safe," he murmured into her hair. "Damien, what's wrong?" Sophia asked, confused but not pulling away from his embrace. "Victoria told me you were in an accident. She said you were dying." Damien pulled back to look at her face, needing to confirm she was real and unhurt. Sophia's expression hardened. She lied. "But why would she do that?" "To manipulate me, to make me realize how much you mean to me." Damien cupped her face gently, and it worked. Before Sophia could respond, Alina appeared at the top of the stairs, supported by a nurse. Despite her illness, the 17-year-old girl's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Is this the famous billionaire?" Alina asked with a weak but genuine smile. "The one who's got my sister all twisted up?" "Alina, you should be resting," Sophia said, immediately switching into protective sister mode. "I wanted to meet him," Alina insisted, studying Damien with sharp intelligence. "You bought Sophia's painting for $200,000? It was worth every penny," Damien said seriously, earning a smile from the young girl. "I like him," Alina announced to Sophia. "He's got good taste, and he's not afraid to spend money on art. That's exactly what you need." Despite everything, Sophia laughed. "Alina, you're impossible." "I'm also right," Alina said firmly. "I'm also going into surgery tomorrow for the next phase of treatment. So you two need to figure out whatever this is between you, because life's too short for pride and fear." The wisdom in the young girl's words hit both Damien and Sophia hard. As the nurse helped Alina back to her room, they were left alone in the hospital corridor. "Damien," Sophia began, but he held up a hand. "Let me speak first, please." He took a deep breath, gathering courage he had never needed in any boardroom. "I've been a fool. When I offered you that business arrangement, I was trying to protect myself from getting hurt. I was scared of what I felt for you, so I tried to put it in terms I could control. And what do you feel for me?" Sophia asked quietly. "I love you," Damien said simply. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you on that auction stage, trying to be brave while your heart was breaking. I love your kindness, your strength, your pure heart. I love the way you put Alina first, the way you see beauty in everything, the way you make me want to be a better man." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "Damien, I love you too. But your world, your family, they'll never accept me." "Then we'll make our own world," Damien said firmly. "Marry me, Sophia. Not for business, not for heirs, but because I can't imagine living without you." "What about your father, Victoria? The company?" "My father can disapprove all he wants. Victoria has played her last game. The company will survive without the Cross family dynasty." Damien took her hands in his. All that matters is you and me and the life we can build together. Sophia looked into his eyes and saw nothing but love and sincerity. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Dare, Kiss was interrupted by Elena's voice from her doorway. Finally, Grace, you owe me $20. I told you he'd propose at the hospital. Grace appeared beside Elena, grinning. Best $20 I ever lost. As laughter filled the corridor, Damien realized that this chaotic, imperfect moment was more beautiful than any carefully orchestrated business deal he had ever negotiated. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the garden of their new home, watching Damien teach Elena how to prune his grandmother's roses. The young girl was in remission, her treatment successful thanks to the experimental therapy they had been able to afford. She wore a bright yellow sundress and a wide-brimmed hat to protect her newly growing hair from the sun. Victoria had disappeared after her manipulation was exposed. Robert Cross had grudgingly accepted Sophia into the family when he realized that his son had never been happier. Carmen Rodriguez had attempted a hostile takeover of Cross Industries, but with his personal life finally in order, Damien had outmaneuvered her easily. Mrs. Cross, James called from the patio, holding a phone. Dr. Mitchell is calling about your appointment results. Sophia smiled as she walked toward the house, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. The doctor had confirmed what she had suspected for the past week. Soon, they would have more than roses growing in their garden. As she took the phone, Damien looked up from the rose bushes, and their eyes met across the space. In his gaze, she saw the same wonder and love that had first captured her heart at that charity auction. Some fairy tales, she thought, were worth waiting for. Elena's laughter rang out as she successfully pruned her first rose, and Sophia knew that their story was just beginning. Love had conquered all, just as it was meant to do.